Welcome everyone to our Allied Health Professional Career webinar. Today we're having a focus on our Allied Health Professional support workers, featuring our speech and language therapy support workers. So what's coming up in today's webinar? We're going to have an introduction to Allied Health Professionals, understanding the role of Allied Health Professional support workers, and we're going to hear from some of our fantastic speech and language therapy support workers across our region. There'll be a time for questions at the end, and also some signposting for further information. At any point through the webinar, if you have a question, please feel free to use the chat function and we'll try to answer those questions best we can. Thank you. There are 16 different professions that sit under the Allied Health Professional umbrella. We're also known as AHPs. AHPs are trained specialists that work in multiple areas across health and social care. You'll find us in hospitals, in community settings, in schools, even in prisons. AHPs are pretty much everywhere. Part of the AHP workforce includes our students, our apprenticeships, and our support workers, as well as our registered professionals. The AHP support workforce is vital to our workforce and to the work we do to give the best care we can to our patients and the people we serve. Allied health professional support workers usually work alongside our registered allied health professionals and assist in delivering care and treatment. There's a range of different job titles and duties depending on the team that they are part of. They often work directly with patients, families, and carers. What we see in our support workers is very caring, good communication, great teamwork. These are some of the skills and qualities that we see within our allied health professional support workforce. There are different levels or bandings for support worker roles, and experience can lead to advancing in those roles and the different areas within our AHP support workers. Here are some typical education and training requirements for our support worker roles. As you can see, it goes from Band 2, Band 3 and Band 4. And this reflects the level of responsibility the individual will undertake in that role. For a Band 2 support worker, we need Maths and English GCSE. And as you can see, the levels of qualification and experience goes up through the bands. I'm now going to pass you over to our speech and language therapy support workers, starting off with Rachel Ramsey. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Rachel. I am a paediatric speech and language therapy assistant who works out of Cumbria in the NCIC Trust. So if we could just move on to the next slide, I'll run through some of these answers to these questions. So who do SLTAs work with? I'll talk specifically about paediatrics because I don't know much about the adult side of things, and we've got someone coming up from that service. So typically, I work with children with a variety of speech, language, communication needs, but I also work with their families, anyone in their education setting, so teachers, teaching assistants, anyone really who works around that child and with that child we sort of want to work with as well. So these children can have a variety of communication needs, ranging from speech sound disorders, where they find specific sounds tricky to produce. They might have language disorders. They might be non-speaking or minimally speaking, so they require an alternative method of communication. So whether that's signing, visuals, communication aids, anything and all of those. And also, as a team, we work with children who are stammering, who have selective mutism, and also children who have needs in swallowing, feeding, that kind of thing as well. So lots of variety of children that we work with. And where can we work? So as speech and language therapy, you can find us in acute settings, in hospitals, clinics, out in the community, in education, in the justice system. There's lots of different places. We're basically everywhere. But specifically me, I work out in the community. So I could be working in child development centres, which tend to be kind of our bases, in our clinics, in schools, but I also go into families' homes as well. So sometimes we want to see the children in their home environment just to kind of see every kind of environment that they're in, because it can be very different. Communication can be very different in all the different settings. So again, lots of different places that I go, and I'm out and about in the car all the time, kind of moving about the county. Um, Next one is, what are the prospects for progression as an SLTA? So I think the most obvious one that people think of is progression kind of linearly up to a therapist. So there is kind of route to go up and qualify. That route is through a degree, so you have to kind of go to university. Or there is, in recent years, they've brought out an apprenticeship option, which is really exciting. So you don't have to kind of go that traditional route through university. You can also have a job alongside your study as well, which is really, I think it's a really nice way to do it, because you're kind of learning on the job as you go. So that's kind of just come out in the last few years. So there's not many places that offer it, but it is an option, which is really nice. But a lot of people don't want to progress to become a therapist and are really happy in that role as a support worker. So I think it's important to note that there's so many different options within speech and language therapy generally, but even just in my kind of working with children, I've had so many opportunities to kind of have a breadth of knowledge, and there's always ways that we can grow and progress within what we're doing. So like it said on I think it was the previous slide, there's the banding, band 2, band 3, band 4, so you can kind of work through those. But just generally on the job, there's so many different ways that, you can get extra training. I've done things like Makaton training, so that's a sign system. I've done things like coaching training, which is a big part of the job, to coach families and carers through implementing strategies. There's just so many different ways within the role that I'm in. So it's never that you kind of have nothing else to learn. There's always something else to learn, always something. So yeah, there's kind of the two different routes. And then typical activities that make up my day as a speech and language therapy assistant. As you can imagine, every day is different. Every day looks so different depending on the children that I'm seeing, the kind of therapy that I'm doing. But generally, I'm out and about in all the different settings that I talked about, working with children on their different therapy plans. So it could be I'm doing some play-based therapy where I'm rolling around on the floor playing with sensory toys and thinking about early communication targets. I could be sat at a desk with a child in clinic working on a specific sound that they find tricky. I could be working with families or people in schools to kind of implement a different alternative communication method, like an AAC or visuals or things like that. So it's so varied in what I do therapy wise. And then there's also the side of the job that supports the therapist activities as well. So I could be, I don't know, in an initial assessment where we're seeing the child for the first time and I'm supporting gathering some observations of the child. I could be on an online kind of webinar like this. We have like a universal side to our service where we deliver advice and things online to lots of different people. So I could be kind of facilitating with that. Yeah, there's lots of different things that we kind of support the therapist with. And then, like any job, there's the admin side. But I would argue that some of the admin that I get to do is a little bit more exciting because I get to make resources and fun things that the children can use in their therapy. So there is the admin side, but there's also that fun side of it as well. And last one on there is, what do you love most about your role? And I think the first thing that always springs to mind is the fact that I can have a hand in seeing the progress that a child makes throughout their journey with speech and language therapy. So whether that's, I don't know, a child using a sign for the first time to tell us that he wants a drink, or whether it's, a child saying, do you know what, that sound was a lot easier to say today, or supporting a family to kind of understand their child's communication. That can be quite groundbreaking sometimes, where they think, oh, I didn't even realize that that's what he was meaning when he took me to the door, or something like that. So it's definitely the seeing the impacts that you can have, and helping a child just be seen and heard is, at the end of the day, what we do this for. So yeah, that's the thing that I love the most about the role. If we could pop onto the next slide, please. I thought I would just highlight some of the fun things that I get to do in my job, which I admit is very fun. This is just kind of lots of different ways that we can deliver therapy. So like I said, it can be very varied. The top left is an example of just play therapy. So, lots of toys, bubbles. That's a big thing in speech and language therapy. Children love bubbles. So yeah, I could just be rolling around on the floor playing with bubbles for half an hour, and that's obviously we do a bit of communication in there as well, but you know if a child's playing, they're having fun, and that's where they learn the best. So we always love a bit of play. That next one along top middle is an example of a communication board, the thing that I'm pointing to. It's basically a paper version of what you see on a kind of, the iPad communication devices. So that's kind of where we start sometimes, and we do that alongside lots of different activities and kind of point to the different symbols to help that child communicate. The next one along is just a language resource that we use sometimes, just to help the structure of sentences develop, colour coding things to make it a little bit easier to understand which word has different meaning in the sentence. Bottom left is a typical speech session for me. I've always got my fishing game out. I've always got pictures out for the different sounds that we're working on, trying to make it as interesting as we can, because sometimes sitting at a desk isn't as fun. So always try and make it as fun as possible. Books is always a huge thing. Generally with children, it's great for learning language, building that connection, things like that. And then next one along was just another fun. I love that dragon game, so I had to get him in there somewhere. Just another example of the toys and things that we use in therapy, and that was more about learning a bit of turn taking, so putting a flag in each and rolling the ball back and forward, that kind of thing. So that's basically my job, is all that colourful fun stuff that I get to do, and a lot of the other stuff as well. And if you go on to the next slide, just my last one, I thought I'd just highlight some of the things that makes a good SLTA, basically. Some of them are quite self-explanatory, but I thought I'd kind of highlight, I think reflective is a big one, being able to kind of do a session or be with a child and run that therapy session and kind of sit back and think, right, what went well, what didn't go so well, what can we change in the future? I think that's a big thing with working in therapy, is being able to look back and see what's worked, what's not worked. And that's something that I kind of do all the did I do what was best in that situation, or could I have done something a bit different? Definitely do that a lot. And patient is probably quite self-explanatory, especially with working with children or working with people in general, having to be patient and having to think, yep, this child doesn't want to come and do this session today, so how can we make it fun? And being patient. And then I thought I'd highlight just problem solver and adaptable kind of come hand in hand. So like I say, working with children, working with people, you can have a nice plan written out on your piece of paper, and within the first 5 minutes it goes out the window because it's just not gone how you planned. So having to kind of be adaptable and think, right, what can I do? The child's run off, or the child is not wanting to do these activities that I've got. How can we make it different? How can we do something? And that's not to say you need to have all the answers, because that's definitely not the case, but just being able to think on your feet and be able to kind of change things is definitely a big one. And then problem solver goes hand in hand. I've always got people coming up to me going, oh, what would you do? Like, I've got this situation, how would you approach it? Or I'm going to people saying, oh, this child found this really tricky, how could I make it easier for them? There's definitely a lot of back and forth in the office of solving those problems. So those two are quite big ones that I I do quite a lot of. And I think that is the end of my slides. I have Rachel coming up after me. I'll pass back to her.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Gibson. I work for the Newcastle upon Tyne Hospitals Trust, and just like Rachel before me, I'm also in paediatrics, and we've recently just changed our name to Children and Young People's Speech and Language, and that's because we go above and have now a post-16 pathway, and that's 16 to 25. So once people have done their GCSEs and go into A levels, college, apprenticeships, then there's a therapist now with an assistant, not me, that I work with, that does that pathway. So we're children and young people's, and it'll be quite similar to what Rachel's gone through, but hopefully there'll be a few new or different approaches. So here we go. Next slide, please. So again, I've kind of focused on my role in paediatrics, and I do know that we can work in other places, especially with adults, and the specialised areas in hospitals, including ear, nose and throat, or ENT, audiology, stroke and rehabilitation centres and wards and homes. But predominantly I am in paediatrics in a community setting. And so I work with a range of children between the ages of 3 and 16. I do a lot of one-to-one situations where it's just me and the child, but I also do ask for school staff to come along to shadow, especially if they're meant to be doing the same activities as I am when I'm not there. And we also work a lot with our families, their parents, the carers, and anyone else involved who will be working with that child. As I said before, where can we work? We can work in hospitals. We are quite frequent in the RVI. We have a team there on our acute and neuro. Speech therapy is in the RVI. We are also in the community like me, and schools, nurseries, and we also do home visits as well. What settings do we work in? Again, it's schools and nursery visits. We tend to do it in a half-termly block. When it comes to school age, especially school age children, us assistants are given the intervention plan, and we work under a therapist who tells us particular targets and if there's any particular activities they want us to do. Within that, we are doing 2 sessions a week and up to 10 sessions in total. And the progress that can be made is quite significant, you'd be surprised. And with home visits, again, it depends on the age of the child and the need of the child. Our autism pathway do a lot more home visits than I personally do, or our early years outreach team, they also do more home visits due to the age of the child, and do a lot of the early based language therapy, and our under 4s pathway also do more home visits. So my predominant role is school and nursery at the moment, but you never know what your next job will be when it comes through. Prospects of progression for us. I'm currently top band 3, so I'm looking to build my portfolio to become a band 4. And this will be done through experience and knowledge of growth, and you learn something new every day. Or I don't know if the other assistants agree, but I certainly do. There's always something I can do better, or I never knew that was there. Especially when Boardmaker comes in and we're making resources, there's lots of different tips and tricks that you can learn. So always be open to it. Experience, it's always good experience that you can then apply to do the bachelor or the master's in university. And as Rachel said, there is the apprenticeship that is currently quite new. We have a therapist in my team an assistant, should I say, in our team who is on the apprentice. She's in year 3 of 4. So this time next year, she'll be in her final year. So I'm hoping the apprenticeship might be offered again, but time will tell. But it is becoming more nationally available. So fingers crossed. What do I do within a day? I do the interventions and visits to schools. They're normally pre-arranged, which I do myself. We get our caseload, as we call them, at the beginning of the half term. We set up the visits with the schools and nursery settings. We then write to the parents to let them know, obviously, that we're going to be going to see their children and which therapists we're working under. And then I would set up the resources and activities for that child, and work towards reaching those targets set by the speech therapist. The less interesting bits completing the reports, but I also quite enjoy it because it gives you time to reflect on actually what you've done and where the child started and where they're at now. And also daily to update the child's records regarding progress, next steps, and updating the therapist of any, wow moments or any barriers that you feel like you need help with or that you feel you've overcome. The therapist is always there. It's quite a nice backup to be able to go back and go, can I just check this? Or do you agree with this? Or can I step up to this? So yeah, it's quite nice to have that go-to person. What do I love about my role? I love the variety of activities that I get to do. Just like Rachel, I get to play. I played Twister this morning, for example, because we were learning body parts. So that was quite fun. I also played. It's not Pop-Up Dragon, Rachel. It's Pop-Up Olaf, so it's similar. But I did that when they got the sound right when we were doing some speech and Arctic work. The difference I'm making to help children and their ability to communicate, whether that be a sound, whether that be sentence structure, whether that be just generally understanding a concept, or if it's just, I could go on forever for what we get to do. It's such a rewarding role. Could I have the next slide, please? So, an examples of how I've helped to make a difference within the speech and language therapy interventions that I do. I'm currently working with the top little boy with his pronunciation of the sound. And he can now use the sound in the initial position, for example, fish, the final position, wolf, and the medial position, like dolphin. And we're now actually trying to put it into sentences. So I was seeing him this morning, believe it or not, and I was making him say silly things like the wolf ate the fish, and then the dolphin ate the wolf, just to get him to use the sound in positions within a sentence, which I think he found quite fun. It's amazing how much difference being able to make a sound correctly can make to speech, especially if it's in your name or someone else's just daily life. We take language for granted, especially speech. So next time you're talking to someone, just have a think how easy those sounds are and what a difference it would make if you could help someone to make that sound. It's quite rewarding. Another idea is, or example, is a little girl with understanding of concepts, and she's now able to use the before and after in her own conversations. Had to start off with the understanding before we went on to expression, so she understood that before meant it happened for the event, and it was by visuals that we did it, because we found out that she's a very visual learner, which is also helping her in school. And she's now using it in her own conversations, just generalized it. She understands it, which one to use and when to use it and what they mean. It's helping her in lots of ways at home. Like a mum said, can now say before breakfast, can you get dressed? She'll actually do it in the right order because she understands. And at school, it's like before home time, you must finish your spellings or something, whatever they do. The before and after is just, it's made such a difference to her, along with other targets that we worked with at the time. The job can be challenging. Don't think every day is a bed of roses. I don't think any job in the world is a bed of roses every day. It can be the child's a bit reluctant, doesn't want to do the work. I mean, we can forced to a percent, but we can't, you must do this, because if they're not going to do it, you're not going to get, any progress. You're not going to get any kind of agreement of, oh, okay, well, I'll come back again next time, but we always try. It can also be that the child's attendance isn't great. That can also affect the outcome. We can turn up to a school and they go, oh, sorry, they're not in today. And I'm like, okay. It's quite frustrating when that happens. At times when you've got your diary full and they're like, can you make up the session? You're like, not today. So it can vary. The reward, that's the main thing. The targets, and seeing, even if the target's not completely reached and it's reached partially, it's a great way of seeing how far they've come and making sure that you're positive and you're reflective to the child of, look how far you've come. You've gone from not being able to say this word to now pronouncing the sound in every word. Or you now understand what before means. You can tell me what you did before the session. You're going to tell me what you did after school. And it's so satisfying. And also that no 2 days are ever the same. Even I see the same child Mondays and Wednesdays and Tuesdays and Thursdays, because I don't work Fridays. But the difference I could have on a Monday to then seeing them on the Wednesday it's never the same. It could be a different game. It could be they're telling me different things. It could be their concentration's different, or their attitude's different, or they've managed the sound, and the progression's just so rewarding. So definitely give speech and language assistant role a thought if this sounds good, because I wouldn't change my job for the world. And I'll now pass on to Vicky Martin.
We currently have 3 speech and language therapy assistants within the adult team across South Tyne and Sunderland. Myself on the left, Drew in the middle, and Kate on the right. Speech and language support workers work with a range of health professionals, including consultants, nurses, GPs, social workers, other AHPs, carers and family members. We work within hospitals, on the wards or outpatient clinics. We work in community clinics and patients' homes or care homes. The settings we work in is inpatients or outpatients. There is the prospect of progression within speech and language therapy. The Trust is in the process of currently setting up their apprenticeship, and hopefully this will be available soon. But when starting off in speech and language therapy, you do start off as a band 2 and then progress to a band 3 after a couple of years of experience. Some of the activities we typically take up in a day could be voice banking for people who's going to be losing their voice or having their voice box removed, equipment demonstrations, supporting clinic setups, assisting and attending in these clinics, taking outcome measures, regular therapy sessions and targeted voice therapies. We do some admin roles as well, like stock ordering and resource making. What I love most about my role is helping the patients and seeing them progress through their treatment. I started my journey to a speech and language therapy assistant in November 2010 under a government funded programme called Future Jobs Fund. The government would support the wages of the individual for 6 months for them to gain work experience, and then the workplace would decide whether to keep the individual on. I was on temporary contracts for 4 years before being made permanent, and here I am nearly 15 years later. My role has been mixed between admin and assistant duties over the years, but I am now more clinical. I started off working with stroke and neuro rehab patients on the wards where I gained most of my experience. I gained understanding around swallow at this time. As I gained more understanding, I started to be part of instrumental assessments like videofluoroscopies, which are x-rays of swallowing, and FEES, which is flexible endoscopic evaluation of swallow. Now I work with patients across all specialities: neuro, rehab, head and neck cancer and voice. I work under the supervision of a speech and language therapist, but also have the ability to adjust therapy plans depending on the patient. I have undertaken a few courses to support my role with communication aid programming, but most of my knowledge has come from the speech and language therapists I work with. I have also completed the care certificate. I mostly work with head and neck cancer patients now, collecting data for research trials, doing equipment demonstrations and regular therapy sessions for both swallow and communication. We do voice banking for patients who's going to be losing their voice due to treatment. We dispense equipment to laryngectomy patients. I also still support the videofluoroscopy clinics, which I find an interesting part of my job role. We book appointments, run the waiting lists and support with setting up in these clinics. I have also supported with the running of the department, making sure we have all equipment and stock to keep the department running smoothly. I have learned a lot over the years, both professionally and personally, and I have worked with some amazing people. I am now going to show a video that demonstrates the work of a speech and language therapy assistant that we made last year. This is me arriving at Sunderland Royal Hospital at about 7:15 in the morning. This is me arriving at the speech and language department, which has been my base for 13.5 years. I am normally always the first one in. First job is to change into my uniform. I am going to take you onto a little tour of my day. Here is a couple of clips of me during the day. This is me grabbing referrals off the printer and adding safety alerts to the hospital system before handing to the therapist for triage. This is me after cleaning a scope and recording it into a record book. So first thing we would do is clean the scope and make sure the scope is clean and ready for the patient. Then we would set up the machine by cutting in the patient detail, getting some gel ready and a wipe for the scope. We then prepare different textures of foods to try with the patients to see how far they can get and manage with. Just get a range of different foods available. We dye some milk blue so it's easy to see in the throat, and then we get a mixture of custard, rice pudding and biscuit, so we have different textures.
Can you give us another one of those?
Custard?
Yeah. Richard?
Yeah,
This is only a spoonful of custard.
yeah.
I want you to imagine it's a big lump of meat and you have to swallow it down. Okay? Really put some welly into it.
So Holly, this is 100 ml of water. I need you to drink it as quickly but as comfortably as you can while I time you and count your swallows. So just when you're ready. Stock check of laryngectomy equipment, and then I would order them. So Drew, today we're going to do a demonstration of a BioZoom, and this is foam tasters for patients that's at risk of aspiration, so they still get a fresh taste in the mouth. So what we recommend is 50 ml of juice, one of the air sachets. And just tip that into the juice and give it a good stir. And with this machine, you will put the pipette on upside down and just add it into the liquid. Which then creates a foam. So the patients can then taste the foam and still have freshness in the mouth. This is me prepping for video fluoroscopy clinic, following a recipe to make up food and drink for the patients to swallow in the X-ray department. So Kemi, can you take a spoonful of this liquid, hold it in your mouth until we ask you to swallow. And swallow. Brilliant. Today we're going to be doing an eye gaze assessment and see if the patient is able to use eye gaze. So first what we do is we go and calibrate the eyes with the patient. So yeah. We'll close that down and then we go to grid 3, which is a communication app to help people communicate with the eyes. Try and spell. So if Drew's going to spell out Wednesday, because that's today's date, so she needs to go to keyboard. And get that to speak for you. Next one down.
Wednesday.
Today we are assisting Drew in completing voice banking. Voice banking is a service we offer for patients that are potentially going to lose the speech and the voice. And we record their voice and they can add it to a device like an iPad. Right, start.
Please call Stella. Ask her to bring these things with her from the store. Six spoons of fresh snow peas, 5 thick slabs of blue cheese, and maybe a snack for her brother Bob.
Time for a quick break, cup of tea, and a catch up with the team. This is me arriving at the ward with equipment for patients and handing over some swallowing recommendations to the nurse on the ward and putting the laminated recommendation sheet above the patient's bed. At the end of the day, We will clean the scopes in the washers, and after 20 minutes we go and remove the scopes and put them away. And after a very busy day, this is me heading home.
Well, that was absolutely fantastic. I learned so much just by watching that. Your roles are so diverse across working with children, young people, and with adults, and it's great to just see that massive diversity there. And the skills that you have, it's just fantastic. And your passion really comes through. So I've really, really enjoyed that. And I've learned a lot in that session as well. I've got a lot of questions, but I'm not going to fill up everyone's time with my questions. Has anyone on the call got any questions that they'd like to come in or pop in the chat from anything that you've heard today or any questions you've got for the panel? Silence. Oh, we've got some congratulations and well done's in the chat there from the presenters. That was really good of you to come on to the webinar and do your presentations. We very much appreciated that. From an AHP point of view, I think it's really important that we highlight our AHP support workers across the different professions. So we aim to do another webinar next month that will highlight some different areas. But it's been absolutely fantastic listening to our speech and language therapy support workers. It's been really good. If there isn't, oh, there is a question. Emily, do you want to see what's going on in the chat?
Yes. 1 second, let me get to the right bit. Lots of praise. The first question is from somebody called Gary, who says, yes, I have one question. As a speech and language therapy assistant, do they also work with adults? And I guess probably the last presentation has answered that question. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's got anything more they want to say around working with adults and the breadth of opportunities there.
I think assistants, we're kind of specialised off into areas, like you have your paediatric therapy assistants and you have your adult therapy assistants. So I don't know much about paediatrics. I know little bits, but yeah, my main part is adults, and we work with like neuro, head and neck, rehab patients, voice patients. Yeah, so there is the patient in adults for people to see. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you for coming in on that. That's really helpful. We've got another question, which is from somebody called Chris, who says, what sort of experience is relevant when applying for Band 2 opportunities? And I guess we saw from the slides that you presented, Alison, and if you wanted to come in a bit on that.
Yeah, so for the Band 2, so it depends in different areas across the region. So in some areas they'll be employing Band 3s and some areas will have Band 2s. It is dependent, and they can also be called different roles as well. So sometimes we call them support workers, sometimes we'll say assistant practitioners. So it all depends on what area you're looking for to get a job. But usually the requirement would be to have your Maths and English GCSE. It's always really useful to get some work experience or even some volunteering within the hospital setting or the community setting. And you can always ask for the work experience teams that are working in the different hospitals or the different healthcare centres across the region, what their work experience policies are. And if you specifically put speech and language therapy, or you put dietitian or physiotherapy or whatever, rather than just generic, we can then look at trying to get you some bespoke work experience placements in the different organisations across the region. So it's always good to get some volunteering or some work experience. The work experience is usually 16, it's 16 and above or 18 above in some places, but we should be able to offer you something to give you more information about speech and language therapy. Does that help, Chris? Come in, you can chat, or you can pop something in the chat box if you want.
Great, thanks, Alison. We've got another question that says, at what age can you start working for speech and language therapy assistants? And
I'll
I guess
come in and,
yeah.
sorry, I'll come in and just say ours tend to be have some experience, and actually in our trust we don't do a band 2 speech and language therapy assistant role as or if we do, I think there's only one. That the minimal our speech and language therapy assistants tend to be band 3s and 4s. And they tend to have had some experience either working, if you go into the paediatric role, you've worked with children or you've had some work experience with children. The adult role, you would have worked in a health and care kind of setting before you come in. So it just varies depending on the team you're going to join, if it's an adult team or a children's team. There's all, there's lots of different requirements, I think. Depending on where you're going to go, where you want to be. But definitely, if you can try and get some work experience, and some organisations are offering, if you do the T levels, they're offering college students experience. I think, Vicky, I don't know if did adults have a T level student or was it children's in our trust?
No, we've just had a lovely little guy called Ryan. He was lovely.
Yeah.
Yes, he's been here a couple of times. I think he finished last week or the week before. But yeah, we've had one called Ryan.
Is that enough information, or would you like more? I don't know who's asked that.
I think it's important for them to reach out to the local organisations where they're based and try to seek some more information, because we're the same as you, Joe, in University Hospital Tees. I've got a question actually. So this is for Vicky, Rachel and Rachel. Before you came into those roles, were you aware of what speech and language therapy was?
I wasn't, not for adults anyway. I didn't realise that there was so much clientele base for adult speech and language, and I didn't realise speech and language dealt with swallowing problems either.
Yeah,
And I think,
I was just going to say, I was similar. I think I had an idea of what I thought it was, and I think I came in thinking, oh, it's speech therapy. It's just sounds. That's all it is. But there's so much more to it, and I think it's more communication than anything else, especially within children's. I think I had a very narrow view of what it would be, and then I came and I was like, whoa, you do that? So yeah, I definitely didn't realize how much you could do, and then thinking about adults on top of that, it's crazy how much you could do.
And the opposite, I actually had quite an insight to children's speech therapy. My mum was a special educational needs teacher, so I kind of grew up around all the therapies basically, and helping her do her resources when I was a teenager, to then working in the Special Educational Needs Foundation myself before getting this role, and after university. So I've come from the opposite side, where that's where I got my experience, was through the Special Educational Needs School as a learning support worker. So that's also another route into all the therapies, because it was OT, physio and speech within it. So if you look into it with children, that's a good starting point if you haven't got the experience for the NHS yet. It might be worth looking into your local schools or even mainstream and seeing if there's any, one-to-one SEN positions, or, when you go to interview, say you're interested in the special educational needs and those with speech therapy, you can sometimes be positioned in a class or with a child that needs extra support. So that was my pathway.
That's really good top tips there. That's really interesting, because we need to know all the different avenues so we can help promote it. Because if anyone's got any great ideas of how to promote areas of avenues to get into working in speech and language therapy, then we're here for promoting that. So that was great information. So if there's no further questions, we will close the session. We'll stay on the call for another 10 minutes or so, just in case anyone wants to stay back and ask a question that they don't ask in the wider forum. But we can stop the recording and just say a big thank you to everyone for speaking today, because it's been absolutely fantastic.